Hola chicos, hoy vamos a hablar del verbo jugar. So we're going to take a look at this verb jugar, which is to play. And I just want to show you guys, if you are on modules and you click on this very first PR, which stands for Página de Recurso or resource page, on the Los Deportes unit or the sports unit, and if we scroll down to fill in some of our notes for our sports vocab, I would like to show you guys right here, it says jugar al. And then it says jugar al means to play. And I want to just briefly talk about this. Okay, we use the verb jugar with different sports or deportes. Okay, the sports themselves are pretty easy to identify because, you have like basketball, baseball, they're cognates to English. There are a few that you got to kind of pay attention to, remembering that football is actually soccer and football americano would be the American version of football. But the big thing I want to point out here is what this al is all about. Okay, and what this is anytime you are talking about a sport in Spanish and you're going to say jugar or to play, you have to take a form of jugar. And jugar is always followed by an A, the letter A. Okay, and in Spanish, if you're looking at all of these sports are masculine and singular. It's el basketball, el baseball, el fútbol americano, and even down below it's el hockey, el tenis, el voleibol, and el golf. Okay, so they are all singular and masculine. So if I was going to say something like jugar a el hockey, right? The H is silent. I would go like this. Okay, and of course I would need to conjugate this verb if I wanted. I would need to conjugate this verb if I wanted to say like I play. But right now this is to play hockey. But in Spanish, in English we have conjunctions which are like will not can become the word won't. But it's an option, right? So in English, we can say will not or we can say won't. It's an option. We get to choose which one we want to use. In Spanish, they have something similar to making a conjunction, except it's not optional. So in Spanish, there's two that I can think of off the top of my head. And the first one is this A plus L. Okay, so in Spanish, if you have A plus L, not he though. If this is he, it does not work. It has to be L like the. It actually is going to become the word al. Okay, so instead of saying jugar a el hockey, you would just make this word become al. Okay, the other one in Spanish that where this happens is de plus el. Again, we cannot do this if it's he. You cannot combine them. But if it's the, this can become one word del. Again, it's not optional in Spanish. Where in English, we can choose to say I will not or I won't. It's not optional in Spanish. Okay, so that is how they get al, because every single one of these sports, you need to put A and then L, and A plus L becomes al. Okay, so if I wanted to say I play hockey, I would say juego, because that's the yo form, al, which is A and L together, hockey. Okay, now let's talk about this conjugating of the verb jugar. Okay, so jugar, like we just said, means to play. And if you want to remember that it's always followed by a or al when it comes to sports, you can go ahead and add that on there. And I want to remind you, in Spanish, we've talked a lot about verbs. We've named AR, ER, and IR verbs. Okay, so AR, ER, and IR verbs, what I mean by that are if the verb ends in AR, it's an AR verb. If the verb ends in ER, it's an ER verb. And if the verb ends in IR, it's an IR verb. So in this case, if we take a look, jugar is an AR verb. But there's two other kind of verbs that we haven't really addressed a whole lot, but there are what we call regular verbs or irregular verbs. Okay, and what I mean by a regular verb, if you think back to my previous units about conjugating verbs, we have the song that I sing. You take the infinitive, you cross the ending out. That leaves you with the stem. Don't leave any letters out. You put the stem in all the rooms and add the furniture. That's how you conjugate. Okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we have 3 steps to conjugating a verb, a regular verb. You take the infinitive and you cross off the infinitive ending, which is your AR, your ER, or your IR, depending on what kind of verb it is. Okay, that was step number 1. Step number 2 is when you put the stem in all the rooms. And step 3 is when you add furniture. Again, if you are totally lost on what I'm talking about right now, I encourage you to go back and watch the video on how to conjugate an AR, ER, or IR verb, okay? So this is like, when we talk about regular verbs, these are our verbs like hablar, comer, escribir, nadar. You can take those verbs, you just cross out the AR, ER, or IR. You put the stem, which would, again, remember the stem if we had the word hablar, the stem would be all the letters besides the ending, the infinitive ending. So it'd be HABL. Okay, and you would put that in all the rooms and add the furniture, which is your endings. If it's an AR verb, it's o, as, a, amos, ais, an. If it's an ER verb, it's o, ais, a, amos, ais, en. And if it's an IR verb, it's o, ais, a, emos, is, en. Okay, but now we're really going to take a look at what we call irregular verbs. We've learned irregular verbs before. They're verbs that don't quite follow this pattern to a T. So some of these irregular verbs that we've learned before is ser. Okay, if we take the infinitive and cross the ending out, your yo form's not just so, it's actually soy. So ser is an irregular. Tener is irregular because if we take the infinitive, cross the ending out, and do the yo form, it'd be tano. But that's not correct. The yo form is tango, so it's irregular. A star is another one. Well, when we talk about irregular verbs, we also have a kind of irregular verb. And one of the kinds are stem changers. Okay, and if you take a look at the name, what do you think is going to happen with a stem changer verb? Well, the stem is going to change. Okay, so if we take a look at this verb jugar, this is a stem changer. Okay, jugar is going to be one of these words that are a stem changer. However, so we already said that a stem changer means the stem is going to change. And what's the stem again? The stem is everything besides that AR. So it's, in this case, JUG. Okay? But one thing that we need to remember about stem changers is it only takes place in what we call the boot. Okay? It's only in the boot, or a boot verb. So if I use my fancy artistic drawing skills and draw boot here, these 4 rooms of my house are the only place that the stem changer is going to take place. And how do I know what I'm going to change the stem to? Well, let me guide you to the chimney. The chimney says U to UE. So what I mean by that is in the boot, everywhere where there's U, or everywhere in the boot, you're going to change your U to UE. So your stem becomes jueg instead of hug. Okay, remember J. Oops, I messed up. There we go. Remember that J makes the H sound, so it's jueg. Now, outside of the boot, what do you think we're going to do? So inside the boot, we do the stem changer. Outside of the boot, you just don't do the stem changer. It's just like a normal AR verb. Okay? And the nice thing here is that jugar still ends, the endings are still the same as a normal AR verb. So you would add o, as, a, amos, ice with your accent on the A, and on. Okay? So ladies and gentlemen, this is how you conjugate jugar. It would be yo juego, which again, yo juego can either mean I play or it can mean I'm playing. Like I'm doing this right now. I am playing. Juegas can be you play or you are playing. Juega could be he plays or he is playing, she plays, she is playing, or again, you formal. Jugamos is we play or we are playing. Jugais is you all play or you all are playing. And juegan can be you all not in Spain, or they are playing or they play. One more reminder is that you need to follow this verb with al before the sport. So again, if I want to say something like I'm playing golf or we are playing golf, I would do jugamos al golf. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching this lesson. I know it was a little bit longer, but you guys were troopers. Muchas gracias.